I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, fam. This is, a nice, bright, sunny, you can see behind me, Sunday. I'm so excited. This is like the best. This is really the best of both worlds. I get to sit down with Dr. Runoko Rashidi and Taaqiy Grant, who created HAPI. And we're going to have a really good conversation from Cairo to Khartoum. So before we get started, we're just going to, do our little intro. I'm going to bring in my buddy Taaqiy.
Peace, family. Peace, everyone. Peace, yeah. Felicia. How are you?
I'm good. This is like cool. We like never actually had a chance to talk to people together and tell them why, if they have not gotten the HAPI DVD or the digital download, they need to be on it right now.
So this presentation here today will actually illustrate that reason and that purpose. A lot of what they're going to see here was the origins of HAPI, or the beginning of it. Years in the making. HAPI was really some odd 20 years in the making, if you really want to get technical about it. So they'll see it today. They'll understand, the importance of seeing the film and making the connections, because some of the things they're going to hear here, they'll see in the film, and they may have kind of like not actually really, connected the dots. This presentation is going to actually help them connect the dots.
Yeah. And, and also I think that I don't think people know. So we have this, we're taking a bunch of people to Egypt next year. But when you guys, after you watch this show, you're going to know why you need to go and why you need to go with us. You'll
yes.
see the wonderful wealth of information that you have, and you are also, if everybody doesn't know, Taaqiy is he is a tour operator and CEO of Aket Tours. And that's his company. He's been going for how many years? You've been going to Egypt and taking Black folks?
Since 1999.
1999. So see, we have a lot of good, experience, and you will know why you need to roll with us to Egypt in February. And we'll show our little clip later on during this presentation. But this is going to be great. And just a little shout out to some people in the chat. DM. Brian, okay, Stacy, Sharon, and you know what? In the beginning, we had 3 girls on here. They were the first people. We had Rashamela, we had our girl Michelle Jewel, and Julie. They were holding it down, waiting for us before time. That's what's up. Thank you, guys. I see Sharon is in the house as well. So, all right, so then we can, just get started. I'm going to
wait. Just real quick before we get started, I just wanted to, definitely thank Dr. Runoko Rashidi for coming out and being with us, and I'll thank him also when he comes on the screen. But the importance of this conversation cannot be overstated when we're talking about our civilization and our history. Nubia is such an important piece of that puzzle. Very little known of, or obscured, untold story, as we, excuse me. We coined it in the Nubia DVD, but we wanted to have someone definitely on here who could share in their experiences in visiting Nubia and being a part of that, of our tremendous legacy. So yeah, I just definitely wanted to tell everyone this is going to be an exciting day, and I'm happy to actually be a part of it.
Yes, and right here, you guys are going to hear a lot about Nubia, and we have the DVD. You can just go to hapifilm.com and pick it up. We don't have this on digital download, so you have to actually get a DVD. And we got a really good price if you actually get all 3. You get HAPI, Nubia, and Tekken if you visit hapifilm.com. And also, guys, I forgot to tell you, you got to like, share, and comment on this video. That's very super important. Because see, this is a conversation that needs to be had. And, everyone else is talking about all types of little foolishness right now, but we are talking, we're staying focused on what we need to be doing. So this conversation feeds into our purpose here on Earth right now.
Yeah. With that being said, everyone just take this moment to definitely hit the like button and share it. This is super important. It takes 2 seconds. And as we're going, definitely want to leave a comment. We understand just how the internet works and the algorithms of it. So we get it out to more people, the more shares, the more likes. It just kind of helps out everything. So yeah, that's it for me. Just, you know, we could bring in the man of the hour right now.
All right. So so Dr. Runoko Rashidi, I'm just talking. You're not even on the screen. How you doing, Dr. Rashidi?
Well, I'm fine. You know, I'm meeting life's challenges just like everybody else, but I'm hanging in there, sister.
Yeah. I tell you, this full moon is no joke. I can just go ahead and let you know that. All right. So go ahead.
So it's been a while since we've been here together, and I'm honored to have you back on the show. It's good to see you. And this presentation is like a role reversal, if you will. Dr. Rashidi is going to be the facilitator, along with Felicia, and I'll just be pretty much kind of gone along, kind of answer some of the questions and present the presentation.
Okay. Well, I think I met you all for the first time around almost a year ago, August or so. And we did a lot of interactions together. So this is a time, as you say, for us to have a bit of role reversal. Now, I think it was in April or so. No, actually, early April, I suppose, that I realized that you were more than a brother at HAPI Talks, that you were a really distinguished scholar in your own right. And I had no idea. I guess that's a reflection of your modesty and humility. But when we began to talk, I was just enthralled. And I look forward to a time where I could see your journey from Cairo to Khartoum. You'll forgive me if my energy is low, but it is. I've been doing presentations almost every day. Next weekend, I take a group to Egypt myself. So I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit run down. So I'm going to let you do your thing, show the presentation, and I'll interact from time to time, ask a question or two, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so let me begin by saying, are we getting feedback? No, it sounds like I'm getting feedback. Oh, okay, so when we think of our civilization in Kemet, oftentimes Nubia is overlooked. We've been kind of taught that Nubia in Egypt, or Nubia in Kemet, or Nubia in Kush in Egypt, however you want to say it, are not one and the same. And they couldn't be further from the truth. They shared a common bond, a common ancestry. They actually formed a symbiotic relationship where they actually needed one another. But if we buy into the notion of them being separate and them always being at war and odds with each other, then we are basically falling for the trap. So the name of this presentation is actually calling Reclaiming the Now. And the way we reclaim the now is by taking Egypt out of the Middle East and putting Kemet back in Africa. And the way you put Kemet back in Africa is by reconnecting the two civilizations and kind of starting from the beginning and moving forward. So one of the things that we did in HAPI was we made the attempt of really more so talking about the relationships between the kingdoms and the now. And we look at this presentation, the first part deals with the chronology of Nubian civilization or Kushite civilization from the earliest periods towards the end in the Meroitic phase. And the second piece deals with just the relationship between Kemet and Nubia, or Kemet and Kush. And it's so important really to underscore that relationship, because that is the way or the mechanism by which white imperialism, prevails. So we're going to get started with the presentation. I just wanted to kind of give everyone a brief kind of overview of what it's about.
Taaqiy, let me stop you right there. There's chaos in Haiti. Cuba's in trouble. All kinds of issues with COVID going up. Why is the discussion at this time about the ancient Nile Valley relevant to us?
It's relevant anytime, all times, because when we understand just, HAPI's been a journey for myself and even a learning lesson. And one of the things that I really came to appreciate is how important our culture is to influencing what we do with our politics and our economics. And just knowing who we are really is the gateway to becoming better and more independent people. So we learn this stuff, but we understand Nubia, Kush, Kemet, Egypt, all that. We really get into better versions of ourselves. So it's
So you would say that no matter what the difficulty, knowledge of self, including this particular knowledge of self, is absolutely 100% essential. Is that what you're saying?
absolutely, because the culture represents the deep values that we have, and the deep values is what's going to guide us through in terms of what we need to do. We need to figure out, if you have the knowledge of self, you spend your money differently, you deal with people differently. You know what I mean? That sense of nationalism, that Pan-Africanness, African nationalism, that's what we need to do. And that's what we need to understand. And that's our form of salvation. And learning about ourselves, the knowledge of self, is the key.
Show your stuff, brother.
Thank you, sir.
And guys, make sure you are liking, sharing, and commenting on this video.
And taking notes, because you're definitely going to get an education.
Absolutely.
All right. So everyone seeing the screen?
Yep.
We can see it.
All right. So here we have a collage of just various different images of the African world on the Northeast Africa, Kemet and Kush. These are all images that I took just to kind of represent what this journey is about. So one of the things we have first in Nubia is we understand the shrouded in mystery and placed in obscurity. The kingdom of Kush and Nubia is the forerunner of what we call Egypt or Kemet today. These images here are part of the coastal incense burner. And it's such an important thing because when we think of the forerunner of Kemet, we have to look at the pieces of civilization that were the precursor or the predecessor of it. So right here, we have an image of the incense burner. I want to come back in this and kind of come out of it, or maybe I'll show it at the end. This is a flat surface of the incense burner. It's actually a round object, and I actually have it, and I will show people. People who've seen HAPI will also had the opportunity to look at it. But one of the things that amazed me, we speak about this image so much, and I didn't know until we started doing HAPI that it's actually here in the United States, in a small museum in Chicago, the Oriental Institute. And for all those who are interested in learning the knowledge of self, I really strongly advise you to go to the museum and actually see this object. However, on the object, we can see the elements of the iconography of Kemetic civilization prior to the beginning of ancient Kemet. We can see here the hejet, or the white crown, where we see up here with the ruler having it. We also see the Heru motif, as we see here, the palace facade. We see here, we see the Serek, which was the predecessor of what we call the Cartouche or the Shinu, where we have also the names of the Nasut Beti. We see the Heka and Nekaka, which is the emblems of kingship. We see the enclosure walls. We hear Saqqara, and this right here is in Abydos, at a place called Casa Kimwe, or Casa Kimwe's pyramid tomb. Down here in the bottom which to me is more interesting, because this is not a so-called Kemetic ruler. This is a Kushite ruler by the name of Najah, who also wore the white crown. So you see that image of kingship was not something exclusively used for the Nile. And that's very important to understand and note, that the Kushite rulers also wore this white crown. So when you're talking about sharing a common ancestry, a common culture, you can see that the two civilizations, in fact, did that.
Taaqiy, how old is that, the Nubian figure that you talked about? What date would that be?
It's around 1700 BC.
Okay.
Okay. And we talked about this a second ago, the Heka, Nekaka, or the crook and flail, as it's seen. And you saw these images on the coastal incense burner. And we know they are definitely something that you see the rulers in ancient Kemet use. So here we are with Nubian chronology. The earliest known period is what they call a Khartoum Mesolithic or Neolithic period from 6000 to 3100 BC. Here you find the oldest examples of pottery in the Nile Valley civilization in the Khartoum area, not in Cairo, not in the Middle Nile region, but in the Khartoum area around the junction of the two Niles. After that, you have what's called the A group, which is about 3800, 3100 BC. And these periods are I guess you say they're named or titled or labeled A group because the archaeologists did the early study didn't know what actually to refer to them as. So you have something called A group and you have something called C group. Now, these two groups are not necessarily distinct of one another because they lived in the same areas, but in terms of their development, they're looking at it around these periods. But when you think about the chronology of the Nubian civilization, these groups are also not exclusive of just Kush, because this is where you find the earliest advances of Kemetic civilization as well, because the Kusul incense burner actually comes from this period, the A group period. So you can't just say this exclusively for the Nubian chronology. The other thing is, so I'm going to get that. So we have the Kerman period, which is a very interesting period. And that's where you start to see the term Kush be used in terms of reference of this title in the civilization. We'll get into Kerma a little bit later on. We have the Kemetic influence, which is pretty much after the Hyksos occupation. You have the Napatan phase from 747 to 270 BC. And then you also had the Meroitic phase from 270 to 350 AD, where you get the last pyramids on the African continent constructed. And this is a very important period, and we'll get into those later. So here you have the area of Lower Nubia, Lake Nasser. This is the region in which you'll find the A and C group people located. And this is also the area that's flooded by the largest man-made lake in the world. Now, Lake Nasser was created with the construction of the Aswan High Dam. And in this area, you see not only the earliest known groups, but you also find the incense burners and some of the other elements of the beginning of Kemetic civilization. So it's very interesting that they picked this location to actually flood, because a lot of the history is lost. So now we move past the A and C groups. We talk about Kerma. And Kerma starts with, the fortified city religious complex referred to as a Dufufa, which is a modern day Nubian word, which means the elevation by men. Here you see an image of the Dufufa and Kerma. This is on the roof of the Dufufa looking down at the administrative system that was around this religious complex. Here you can see us with Dr. J here when we went in 2004 inside the Dufufa. On the other side, this is what we call the Eastern Dufufa, or the Tumule Royal Cemetery. This is interesting because this was the other Dufufa, but instead of being to be more of an administrative place, this is a religious complex where the burials were. Now, in this section here, they had football staff. Go ahead, Felicia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, because you're flying through this. Wait, I just need a second to get my bearing. So when you went here, and you went with Dr. J, what year was this that you guys went, and how did you get here?
So the first time I went was in 2003. That was by myself. Second time was 2004, and that's when Dr. J was with us.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. So
now the Tumule, if you want to think of predecessor pyramids, Tumule probably would be that, was these mounds, these burial mounds. And some of them were large as football fields, especially for the royal rulers. And some of them had tremendous significance in terms of the grave goods that were found. You have Tumule from basically what we call the Lower Nubia area, southern Egypt, all the way up to maybe like the third or fourth cataract. The Nile was flooded with Tumule. Then later on, you will find the mastabas, step pyramids, and so forth. But this is actually the first mound burials that we have. And mound burials is something that we know all over the world. But the Africans, of course, were doing it first here in the Nile Valley. This is still the Eastern Dufufa, and you can see some of the mounds here, or the remnants of them. So, and I know I'm moving a little fast, so if you guys do have any questions, I can stop and go over it. After we move out of the Kerman phase, what we have now is the Kemetic influence phase. The phase was strongly influenced by the Kemetiu. Here you have the holy mountain of Jebel Barku, or in the language Juwan, the Temple of Amun. This is actually a better shot of it. And for some reason, the Kemetiu saw this to be a very religious place. And my guess is that it was a religious complex prior to the arrival, because these things kind of, already predate these things. So here's actually a shot of us here in front of the temple. This is one of my favorite shots on the mountain looking down at the temple. I actually climbed up the mountain and I took this picture. You can see the pylon gateways, hypostyle hall. Here you have the altar for the Holy of Holies. It's a beautiful complex. But to the north here, you also have the temple complex, the palace complex of Natakamani and Queen Amanishiketu, just right here to the north. This is inside the chapel at inside the mountain. This is one of my beautiful, for me, one of those beautiful reliefs here because it kind of describes how they saw the mountain. Here you can see the outline of the mountain itself. But in here you have the figure of Amen, and they tell you that this is the holy mountain of Juan where Amen, or the spirit of Amen, dwells. So they saw this as a holy sanctuary place. One of the important things to kind of know about this period, and we kind of skipped a part, is that this is the Napatan phase. So when you think of Napata is probably one of the greatest city-states, definitely at that time in the world. There are more pyramids in Napata than it is all of Kemet. And we're going to look at just the three main phases of the Napatan civilization. So when we look at Napata, you got to look at the Jebel Barku, Kuru, which we're looking at now, and also Nuri. And these three main components comprised of what we call ancient Napata. Here's some of the tomb chapels in Kuru. So this is an interesting one. This is Tanit Amen in Kuru, and he was the nephew of Taharqa. This is actually in the tomb looking out, coming down the stairs in the tomb chapel. You can see the religious, you can see the Metanetio on the wall. And one of the interesting things here is to note that sometimes Egyptologists will use this color paint as a depiction of race. And we see the Nubians or the Kushites who were unmistakably black do the same thing. So we know that the red pigmentation was not an indication of race. This is also Queen Kahalta. She's one of the great queen mothers during this period. You can see her here. This is all in Kuru, a separate tomb chapel. That's
the mother of the king.
Yes. Yes.
What's her name? What's her name again?
Kahalta. Kalhata.
This tomb is very, very important because this is the last ruler of what we call the 25th dynasty of Kemet. By this time, the Assyrians have invaded Kemet, and the Assyrians and the Nubians are the world's major superpowers. So this is the tomb of the last king of what is called the Nubian or Kushite dynasty of Kemet. This is very important, and the images, the paintings are so well preserved in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here you can see the mummified remains of the king laid out on the bed. And here's the example of the bed. And one of the things that's really interesting about this and talks about when we speak of the confluence of civilization is that in some instances, the Kushites did not use the sarcophagus or the karas, as we call it, to mummify or to put to inter their loved ones. At times they would be mummified and laid on a funerary bed. This practice is something that's still being done throughout Africa. From my knowledge, the Europe, in some cases, the Akan, the Iwa, the Ga, people still do that to some of the chiefs when they make their transition. After they mummified them, they put them on funerary beds. So this practice of doing this moved, like many things, from East to West Africa. So don't believe anybody when they tell you they're not one people. So we talked about Kuru. The other side of the river, we have Napata Nuri. And Napata Nuri is a fascinating place. We have a total of 74 pyramids constructed between 664 and 300 BC. 54 were built for queens and 20 for kings. And the first pyramid there was by Taharqa. And here's just some of the beautiful images of Napata. And this is all one pyramid field. This is actually on the top of one of the pyramids looking down, taking this picture. This is in front of Taharqa's pyramid. Me and one of my close Nubian friends, Rashidi. Here's the Shawapis from the pyramid of Taharqa. This is actually in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Oh, wow. Like a lot of the stuff that we're looking for, need to know, is here, right on our fingertips. It's either in Boston, Chicago, New York, definitely in Europe, but some is right here in the United States, and we need to take a look at some of these things.
And there are thousands of Shawaptis. For whatever reason, there seem to be more of them from this period than in Kemet itself. What is a Shawapti, my brother? How would a person understand the importance of that?
So a Shawapti is a figurine that was crafted to help, I wouldn't just say just necessarily the ruler, but the ancestor now in the afterlife, and would take the place of the servants that they would have here on earth. And it was a more, I guess, in some cases people argue, and I can't think of the term right now, about whether actual burials of servants, but the Shawaptis is the spiritual component to that, and actually just really aid in that assistance. Here's a group of people we saw when we actually got to Napata. Here's one of my favorite individuals, King Alamani, who was the grandson of Taharqa, lived to this period. This statue here is also in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Here's a king of Spelta. And these are people caught towards the later end of the Napatan phase, after, the Assyrians now annexed Kemet, the rule of Kush during the invasion of Semtek II, the brother and successor King Alalami, and the great grandson of Taharqa. Here's a very important thing. This is the sarcophagus of King of Spelta. This is actually in the basement of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Don't ask how we got an opportunity to get down there, but we were able to do that. This sarcophagus is so heavy that none of the other floors above can actually hold it. So it has to be in the basement, and it's actually closed to the public. But that day, for whatever reason, they wanted to be nice and let us go down there and take this image. Now, King Akamani is a really important person, because this is the legendary story of how the kingdom moved further south from Napata to Meroe. And one of the things I really wish I had here for context is maps, because it's really important to know just geographically how these things work out. And then when we take this information of moving and look at what Chancellor Williams spoke about in terms of the land of the blacks moving further south, you understand that as the Europeans, well, not so much Europeans at this point, but yeah, Europeans, because Greeks and Romans are definitely in play here, and the Asians begin to encroach, the land of the blacks move further and further south from the Napatan period, or Napatan period, and also the Napatan area, which is be situated what we call it maybe around the third cataract in the Sudan. And Meroe is not too far north out of Khartoum. So you can see it moving further and further south. But anyway, King Akamani is the one who we can say is responsible for moving the civilization from Napata to Meroe, and there's some speculations of why this actually happened. His temple that they constructed it in Kemet. Now we get to one of my favorite places, Meroe. Some of the names of the locals call it Bajedaria or Shindi. You have 40 pyramids here for kings and queens, buried in the royal city of Meroe. And I think this is one of the most beautiful places on earth, because the way the sky, monuments, and sand all kind of contrast one another. Yeah. It's a beautiful place.
What was it like when you went the first time? You said you went by yourself. I know I've had my experiences there, and it's like magic. But what was it like when you went the first time in 2003 by yourself?
It was a fascinating place. It was definitely the first stop. I didn't see anything else, because as you know, for those who don't know, you come into Khartoum in most cases, and you have to move northward. And the civilization, all the ancient sites are north of Khartoum. Some are 12, 13-hour, drives through the desert. Some of them are a little closer, like Meroe. Meroe is about a 3-hour drive. So it was a fantastic place. I was in awe. And it was like, wow, this is so beautiful.
See, my experience was just the opposite of that. We went all the way farthest north, and then we came back towards Khartoum. And on the last day, we would stop at Meroe. And I tell you, my brother, you know what I'm talking about. Stay there indefinitely. There are hardly no tourists.
No,
that soft, powdery sand. Those pyramids, and you've already mentioned a lot of them were for the Kandakas, the queens. That's a powerful experience. Of all the trips I've had to the Nile Valley, this might be my favorite spot.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. And you can see here something that the Meroitic people or the Kushites of this period did, combining tomb chapel and pyramid in one complex. So here's where you would go,
And
leave
a
your
lot of
offerings.
these have been reconstructed as well.
Yes, yes, yes. I think we actually have some images. You can actually see here where reconstruction is taking place, particularly in this pyramid here. And, you know, they were destroyed by Europeans looking for gold in most cases. I think the Italian Giuseppe Fellini, they would just drop dynamites, sticks of dynamite in the roof of the pyramids and totally just destroyed them looking for gold objects. So we talk about the Kandaka, the great Kandaka, and we have to take this opportunity to mention that the Kandaka, or the word Candace, is Kandaka. So we have one of the greats here, Queen Amana Shaketo. He was one of the most powerful and wealthy rulers of late Meroitic period. Her tomb at Meroe is one of the largest ever built. And we talk about Giuseppe Fellini, who tore down her pyramid looking for treasure. This is something that's also important too. The Kandaka was shown, you know, with weight. That was something that was seen as a sign of beauty in the ancient world. You know, the women, they were displayed in very prominent figures. And she's also the daughter of a queen. So you got the line of the Kandakas, and her mother was a Merois who actually fought the Romans. And here's an example of what type of devastation they did in Meroe, looking for gold or other treasures. Here's some of the gold that was taken from the tombs.
Wait, Taaqiy. Wait, go back to that. Oh, wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and Dr. Rashidi, help me out here. This is in Berlin now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's either in Berlin or Munich. See, you haven't talked about the Germans yet. You've talked about the Italians, but those Germans didn't mess around. And so and then you come to Reisner.
Right.
You talk about the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So first you have the Italians, then you have the Germans, and then you have the Americans under the racist Reisner, whose artifacts are now in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. These are either in Berlin or Munich, Germany.
Right. So Dr. Rashidi brings up an important point when we think in terms of archaeology. George Reisner is considered by the Europeans to be the father of modern day archaeology. And he would dig in Egypt in the summertime, in the Sudan in the winter. And the government at the time of the Sudan came up with the deal that whatever you find, half would go with you to Boston and the other half would stay there. So this is why the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, he was a Harvard scholar, by the way. Museum of Fine Arts in Boston has the largest collection of Nubian artifacts outside of the Sudan.
Let me tell you this, and this is something I just recently found out myself. Reisner, in his excavations, used Sudanese slaves to do the work. How about that?
That wouldn't surprise that wouldn't surprise me.
No, it's a fact.
No, I believe you. That wouldn't surprise me at all. No, definitely, absolutely. Because he was definitely a racist. In fact, in his writings, he would say that there was no way that he wouldn't even believe that the Kushites were black. He said they were Libyans.
Yeah.
You know, so
anyway, brother, I don't want to know if I should keep interrupting you or not.
No, please. No, please, by all means.
It's a really beautiful piece of art, and it speaks to the volume of gold that came out of that area. Gold was very abundant. Okay, my brother, I leave it alone for a while.
All right. Here you can see the plaque, which tells you the date this actual pyramid was reconstructed. Each ones that went through a reconstruction phase was actually given a plaque telling the date that this actually happened. This is on the other side of the road, if you will, from the pyramid complex at Meroe, and as we call the Royal City of Meroe. And it's really a fascinating place. You can see the Temple of Amen. This is one of the beautiful things about, again, cultural confluence, because now we're all the way in Khartoum and we see temples of Amen there. And it's in ruins, but this is definitely a replication, not a replication, excuse me. This is the remains of that temple complex that was at the Royal City of Meroe. This is actually a better shot. You can see the Holy of Holies and the altar here, the hypostyle hall, the pillars here. This is an interesting place. We talked about some of this the other day with Dr. Chika Okua, and about just the the medieval period and what the Moors brought to the Europeans in terms of just bathing. So here we have the Royal Nubian bathhouse at the Royal City of Merowe. This is actually a bathhouse in the city of Merowe during this period, a remarkable piece of not just art, but also technology. These lion heads you see here are actually spigots, and the water would come through them. So they produced or created this type of aqueduct system that was connected to the Nile that actually poured water in this bathhouse. You can see the stairs here descending down into the actual pool itself.
This is in Merowe?
Yes, in Merowe.
I don't recall seeing that, brother.
Yeah, it's in the Royal City.
That's profound.
Yeah, it's in the Royal. Actually, go back. It's actually in the Royal City of Merowe. It's not too far from the temple. Maybe a couple yards.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, just a couple yards. A couple yards from the temple. And we've been in here twice. And when we go in there with the people, they say, they told us that they found the reason why they knew what it was, because one day they had a flood and the water started coming out of the lion's mouths. And they realized, like, wow, that's actually the purpose of the functionality of this bathhouse.
Okay.
So we talked about the conductors earlier. And another one we have to mention is the Queen of Montetori. Fought the Romans in 24 BC at Dhaka. This is Dhaka here. Dhaka is actually in southern Egypt or lower Nubia. This temple here is actually in the Lake Nasser area. Had the opportunity to go on a couple of Lake Nasser excursions, and some of the monuments that were saved from Lake Nasser were moved in different locations. And this is one of them, the Temple of Dhaka. She was married to King Nata Kanani, and we spoke about them earlier. Their palace just being to the north of the temple at Jebel Barkal. And she brokered a peace treaty between Rome and Kush during this time. And this all started because the Romans were actually taxing the Kushites or the Nubians in lower Nubia or southern Egypt too much, and she marched her army north to fight them. And you can see here the line of these different queens, the Kandaka, origin from the word Candace, and she was also the daughter of a queen of Manasiketu, who we spoke about a minute ago, Shepi Fellini destroying her pyramid.
Now let's put this in context. You have the dynasties of Kemet, then you have the Ptolemaic period, and then the Romans come after the Ptolemies. So this is a period where we really don't talk about very often in terms of Nile Valley civilization. A lot of us cut off what we call Nile Valley civilization with the 30th dynasty and then the Ptolemies. So this is, for a lot of us, kind of uncharted territory. And I salute you for the work you've done here, my brother.
Yeah, this is a continuation. And, looking at things like destruction of Black civilization, and again, talking about the land of the Blacks, the line of the Blacks, the work of the great Dr. Jake Carruthers, the Wahimi Wasu, just talking about the reemergence, the reawakening, just recreating ourselves over and over again. And this is super important because this is what the Africans have done. And it tells you about the resiliency in the fight in the African blood, African spirit. So we have to keep that going. Okay. One of the other great locations of this area is Naga Musawarat. And this temple here was built again by the pair, I like to call them dynamic duo, Nata Kamani and Queen of Montetori. So one of the things we did years ago, we formulated the Upper Nile Research Society, and the primary mission was really to talk about some of the things in this presentation, or the first part of it, but again, more so concentration on unraveling the Nubian, like we stated earlier, the Nubian-Egyptian relationship. And some of the information that was coming out of the Sudan because of the construction of the two new dams, the Kajbar and the Hamdad dams, which was destroying some of the monuments or the history further south past Aswan, which we know was already destroyed. Some of the stuff we actually have to move a little quickly in terms of what we're doing if we're going to actually reclaim our civilization. Now, I always love this image because this is what you see in terms of so-called Nubians. I call them so-called Nubians because we don't even know what that word Nubian actually means or where it really comes from. The most popular understanding of it, the word noob, or comes from the Egyptian word for gold, which would make sense because this is where the gold land was. But when we think in terms of the relationships between Kemet and Nubia and who they were actually talking about, they were very detailed in certain groups of people because they had friendly relationships with others and not so friendly with the other groups. But the history doesn't speak that way. Egyptologists don't speak that way. When they speak it, they lump them into all one group of people. And if you believe Nubia means black, you would then take it in your mind that the Egyptians or the Kemetu was actually fighting black people. This is from the temple of Abu Simbel. Before you enter Ramses II temple, on one side, you have these brothers with this one particular headdress bound captives. And on the other side here, you have various bound captives, very distinct Asian groups of people. They did not confuse groups. And I wish I had a more onward shot so you can see it. Let me go back to that for a second because I want to kind of, you can see some of the different types of headdress. And, you know, some of them are Hittites. Some of them are, you know, just various Canaanite groups that lived in Asia who were enemies.
So when it came down to the racial distinctions between the two groups?
Not just racial distinctions, but also tribal distinctions. Because when you think in terms of this region, there was various different tribal groups. So when we go back to something like this is one particular distinct tribal group that obviously were enemies with the Kemetu, not necessarily all the groups, it's just one particular group. And when we write this,
you know, a typical tour guide would tell you that the Nubians, the black folk, these here are slaves.
Absolutely.
And the other ones are captives or prisoners of war.
Absolutely. So this piece where we're coming in here is so important because when we get into the relationship, you'll see that this group here does not comprise all of the people of the Southern Nile Valley region. These are some of the images that you commonly see. This is actually in the British Museum of the relationship between Kemet and Nubian. They said the Nubians bringing gifts to the Kemetic rulers. And this is what they want you to see, but they don't want you to see the reality of it. Here's what we're talking about in Abu Simbel. So right in here is where those two images were. This is very important to me because when I think of the relationship between kingdoms of the Nile, we constantly talk about this temple, but not so much this temple, the temple of Nefertari. And we think about where this temple was constructed and who was it constructed for. The common understanding is that Nefertari was from this area, and this temple here was constructed as these marriages in some cases were political, but also a memorial and dedication to this just great, if you want to say the word Nubian right now, but the sister of the Southern Nile region.
So you think the temple of Nefertari there is because Nefertari was from that area?
Yes, absolutely.
How far are these temples from Dhaka, the ones you showed earlier, or Decca?
I would say Dhaka is maybe about 20 miles to the north.
Okay, all right.
Dhaka is between Aswan and Abu Simbel.
Okay.
But I love this shot. I got an opportunity to take this shot actually we were on a boat in Lake Nasser. We actually was able to capture both temples at once. Because normally, like I said, we just see this one, but not this one.
So this was on one of those Lake Nasser cruises where you?
Yes.
Oh yeah, wow. Not many people do that, brother.
And when you do the Lake Nasser piece, that's when you actually go see Dhaka and places like Wadi Sabua and some of the other temples that we just don't get the opportunity to visit.
And that's the only way you can see them, from a boat on Lake Nasser.
Yes, but the boat actually, it docks as we move, further north. Each location you go to, they actually stop at.
Okay.
So here's an up close image of Nefertari's temple complex in Abu Simbel. It's a beautiful temple. There's also another individual, Mentuhotep, his great, if you want to say, Nubian wife, showing the relationship between the marriages of Kemetic rulers and Nubian queens. Is one of the favorite ones, Queen T. And this is very important because scale was always a thing in Kemet. And the king, or the Nasubiti, is God incarnate. But here you see Queen T on the same scale as him. A very important piece of artwork depicting that she was also divine herself. And there's an image of the great bust of Queen T. It's a beautiful piece of work. And you get her major roles here. You know, she played a major role in Egypt's foreign affairs, following the passing of her husband, Amenhotep III. And she was also the bridge of the Nile. Bridge of the Nile meaning bridging the gap of the Nubian piece and the Kemetic piece. Here's one of my favorites here, an image of Ninu. And these are all people or individuals or tribes or groups of people that were so-called Nubian, but a part of the Kemetic civilization. And when you really get into it, they're not different. They're one people that lived in different places. You know, this is Ninu, who's a Medjay. And Medjays are very important because they were talked about the Pangrave or the Sea group earlier. You can see here they were incorporated into the Kemetic society as early as the 6th dynasty. They were also known as fierce warriors. And the Medjay became the word in the Medo Neter for policemen. And we talked about this. Infodici has a book, and others. We talked about this many times here on Happy Talks, just how significant the Medjay were. This is one of my favorite images from the Shemiad Ipet, or the Luxor Temple. Here's what we have. We have the procession of Opet, the Opet festival, as it's moving through. And they had a depiction of it inside the temple. And here you can see Het Heru, the African woman, coming out of the cow. Very powerful piece. And Dr. Ben would always talk about this image here. In Queen Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, we talked about the great expedition to the land of Punt. And you see these two great African nations trading with one another. Something else we discussed in HAPI. Queen of Punt, accompanied by one of her chiefs, greeting the members of Queen Hatshepsut's expedition. Here's one of my favorites, the Temple of the Nobles in Aswan, Harkuf. And this should have been and we think in terms of chronological order. Here's one of the things that would be first. Harkuf is something or someone that was very important because he detailed his expeditions to the south in a place called Yam. Most historians today believe that Yam and Kerma were actually one place. And when we're finished this, I got to bring a picture of Harkuf because we've been talking about Harkuf. I have for quite some time. And for the first time, I had the opportunity to go to his tomb in the tombs of the nobles in Aswan when we started doing or making of HAPI. So it was very important for me on a personal level. But you can see here he was the governor of Elephantine during the reign of Pepi II during the 6th dynasty. And there's actually a map to get an idea of some of the things here. We have Lower Nubia, his Dhaka. Dr. Rashidi?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see Dhaka and you see some of the images of what we have, the places here in Lower Nubia.
Okay, well,
so
wait, I'm sorry, Taaqiy. Can you just go back to that one more time, just so we can look at this map a little bit closer? Because some of the places you're talking about is on.
Yeah, and that's actually a good idea. I could point some of them out, give it some context. So Elephantine is where essentially Aswan is, and this is where Harkuf was the governor of Elephantine, right here in this area. His Dhaka to the south. We don't have Abu Simbel here, but Abu Simbel will be right here in this area. Some of the other places we talked about, like Kustul, is here. We have Jebel Barku right around the Nile bend. Yeah, the Nile, they call it this as it goes actually south to go really north. Jebel Barka and Napata right in this little cup right here.
Okay.
You have Dungala and Kerma around the 3rd cataract, Jebel Barka around the 4th cataract. And further down here, past the 5th cataract, 6th cataract is Khartoum.
Okay.
But it's not on this map.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Okay.
All right. So Sabik Nakht, another one of our HAPI cast members. He was the governor of Nekeb during the 17th dynasty, and he documented the attack of the Federation of Nubians from Lower Nubia. We had the opportunity to go to his tomb. It's in the film for those who haven't seen it. Please see it. And one of the things that was so important about this individual in documenting this attack is because modern Egyptologists believe that these images here, and this is really interesting because these are Kemetic statues. that were found in the burials of the rulers of Kermer. And their notion is that they believe these attacks that Subignac and others fought against were incursions into southern Egypt, bringing back what they would call war booty and carrying these heavy statues back to them. I believe something totally different. I believe they said the common ancestry, and these were a part of people who they actually revered and loved. And we see examples of that. So when we talk about the 17th dynasty and really going into the phase of what happened with Subignac, we first got to talk about the Hyksos and second Rata and the people that dare Balas. Something else that was heavily spoken about in HAPI. So one of the things you have in second Rata at Dare Balas and the people with him, we know he led the first open revolt against the Hyksos. He was the father of two pharaohs, Kamoza, who died on the battle, and Amoza, who actually carried the fight with him. He built a palace of mud brick at Dare Balas, which is in the film. But one of the most important things there, interestingly, a large amount of pottery known as Kermanware was found at the site, indicated that a large number of Kerman Nubians resided there with them, and also fought alongside the Kemetu in a battle for the Hyksos, a battle against the Hyksos. And if you know anything about the history of this period, we're taught that Kemet is at odds with Kush, and that Kemet is at odds with Kerma. It's puzzling for me, and I still don't understand how they're fighting with them against the Hyksos and also fighting with themselves in Kerma. There's a part of the history that's being left out, and it's a part they're not telling us. And this is why this information is so important. So we look at some of the Kermaware, which we've talked about in the film. This was the pottery that you see at Dare Balas. And even to mention, not even just pottery, there was royal tombs of Kerman officials at Dare Balas. So it wasn't just commoners. And it wasn't just one or two people, with thousands of people or Kerman Nubians there that resided at Dare Balas with that royal family. You know? So we talk about the war crown, just going to war and wearing this, and the brothers here. We talk about this. Sheikh Anta Diop was the first one to introduce this in terms of this emulating this hairstyle, this headdress of other Africans that fought along the Kemetu, what I like to call the first African Union, to defeat the Hyksos. Now, just to backtrack for a second, we spoke about the royal cemetery at Kerma and some of the Egyptian artifacts that was there inside the burials, and the Egyptologists stating that these images or these statues came from war. I believe something different. The reason why I think that's different, because this image right here, this is not in Egypt. I didn't take this picture in Egypt, but I took this myself, so I know I'm an account for this actually being the real thing, the real deal. This is in Kerma. This is at the eastern Dufufa, and what we have here is the winged sun disk, or the Haru Baguette. You don't get this in Kerma unless it's erected there as a ceremonial, as a religious, as a spiritual component. So we know that the people there shared this ancestry. We know that they shared not only not the ancestry, but also philosophical. They're not telling us. And again, the Kerman Nubians, don't forget, are in Kemet fighting against the Hyksos. So when we see this Haru Baguette, which I was fascinated when I saw it, you can see the sun disk, and you can see the snake's hair, and you can see the wings. And we go to Kemet, you can see the temples, and here's one here. There's another one. But you also see it in Kerma. So for me, that was a fascinating find. I was just kind of stumbled across it. I was like, wow, this is a Haru Baguette. And the whole notion of them being always at odds with one another has to be questioned. Then we look at a place like Abu Simbel, and we see that the Kemetu identified one particular group. So it leads me to believe that there were groups coming in always from the west and migrating into the Nile Valley, and there may have been conflicts with certain people, but not everyone. Then you also see someone like Harkuf, and Harkuf tells you this because in the expeditions, Harkuf writes in his tomb wall that he feared for his life coming back north because there was groups in between Yam and Kemet that were hostile and who would rob and kill him and steal all the goods that he had on the trade expedition. So the kingdom of Yam, not once, but several times, gave him his army to escort him back to Kemet to protect him. That doesn't show that they were hostile to one another. That just showed that they actually revered one another and they loved one another. However, there were other groups coming in. Then we look at Subik Knox's tomb. He talks about the confederation of the lower Nubia area, the southern Egypt piece, is where these groups begin to migrate, settle, gain control. And my notion is that they didn't only gain control of southern Egypt, they gained control of the northern Sudan, which Kerma was a part of, and they annexed Kerma and part of their empire. So when the Kemetu was actually fighting that group, they were fighting a different group. And they weren't just fighting with them. The Kerman people who were annexed were a part of that liberation campaign as well. So again, we talk again about Subik Knox, the governor of Nekeb. He documented this attack. And again, it's in HAPI. And we actually have the image of the actual recording on his tomb wall. We spoke about the people. And he actually mentioned them by name, which is really important also. The Wawat, the Sajut, and the Arjat was the 3 different, I guess you say, tribal factions that confederated or aligned themselves to form that federation to attack not only southern Egypt, but also northern Sudan. And just going back to your earlier question about why is it so important? This is so important because if we don't know our history, this is the type of nonsense they're going to show you. You know, this is the so-called reconstruction of what they felt King Tutankhamun would have looked like.
Do you mean to tell me, are you suggesting the possibility that the descendants of the people who enslaved and colonized us might lie to us and give us misinformation of our history? Is that what I'm hearing? Could that be possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not only, listen, this made me laugh because when when I saw this was funny. But I got one better because it didn't just start there. It goes to something like this. This is one of my favorite people, Maharpra. When we talk about discovered or intact tombs, Maharpra's tomb was actually discovered before King Tut, or before Tutankhamun, but little was known of him. And you can see here on this copy of the Book of the Dead, Maharpra's depicted with his face black instead of the normal red. And this is actually an excerpt from a book of The Complete Valley of the Kings, I think it's called. A detailed examination of his mummy, which showed he died about 24 years of age, and also showed that he was Negroid, but not actually a Negro. And this always amazed me because this is actually a quote, and they're saying that he was black, but not actually black.
That's how I feel about those darn Olmec heads, brother. The exact same way.
But you know
that they're out to get me. Do you have a picture of the brother?
Yeah, he's coming. He's coming. He's in the presentation. But I just want to go back to this for a second because his tomb is in the Valley of the Kings. And we visit it's KV 36, Kings Valley 36. And I take groups every time we go to Kemet, we go visit Kings Valley 36. And we show them that it's not just closed in a door, it's closed, like plaster closed. There ain't nobody even going in there. And here's the image of his mummy. So
the lion of the battlefield. And that brother died when he was only 28 years old.
Yes. Here's actually a image of his loincloths, Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. This is the image I took in the Boston Museum. Here's the image from the actual tomb wall, and this is from the book, Complete Nile Valley. And this is actually the tomb. So when you go to KV 36, this is what you see. You got the little 36 here. Not even a door. Some tombs are closed. The door's still there. They didn't even have a door there. Wow. This is one of the favorite images talking about just the relationships. This is something that we speak of quite often. This is from the tomb of Ramses III. The depiction of the Kemetu and the Cushites being the same people. The Shabaka stone we spoke of many times. Just another example of the cultural confluence between Nile Valley civilization. You know, so pretty much, yeah, that's the end of it. And we can kind of leave off on the Shabaka stone, just really talking about the importance of this and how the civilization was resurrected during this period. Talking about again about the women Hemi Wasu during the 25th dynasty in Shabaka, finding the worm-eating papyrus depicting the oldest creation story on Earth, and wanting to make sure that this history is recorded and documented. He inscribed it in this stone. These lines you see here, unfortunately, it was used later on as a millstone to grind wheat. But this is in the British Museum. But before we kind of do that, I just want to kind of get back here and start the screen and kind of come to some of the other things I wanted to show in terms of some of the people.
Okay, guys, while Taaqiyy's getting that together, please like and share this video and comment on it so that we can get this information out to more people. And also, right here, if you guys want to get in contact with Dr. Rashidi, there's his website and there's his email address. I know it by heart. He's been like on you've been doing 1,000 things.
Yeah. But this is Brother Taaqiyy's day. And I'm not going to let him go without asking some serious questions to put it in context. So tell me when you're ready, my brother and my sister.
All right.
Wait one second.
But I appreciate you all.
Yes, but Dr. Rashidi, we couldn't be here without you. See, there's no way we can exist without you.
Yeah. Great. That sounds fantastic.
and everyone in the chat feels the same way. So we have
believe me, this time next Sunday, I'll be in the Nile Valley. So all this is like meant to be. I've done like 5 Zoom presentations in a row. And then next week I go to Egypt. I'm going to take a break for a while. And one thing I wanted to point out too, today has just been challenging on a lot of personal levels that's got nothing to do with Happy Talks or African history, anything like that. I think that the community needs to understand that as hard as you all work and as great as you are, and I can say the same thing for myself, we're still people and we still have the day-to-day challenges that everybody else has. And that's why I wanted at the beginning for Brother Taaqiy to make it clear why knowledge of self is essential. Because many of our people say, I ain't got time for that. I can't relate. I got other things to do. I'm pressed against the wall. And we have to reinforce that again and again and again. And we can never get it enough.
Yeah.
So here's one of the things.
But thank you for the shout out.
Yeah, I mean, they're telling your birthday is coming up. I didn't know your birthday is coming up.
It is. It's coming up. I need a break too. What is that we looking at, Brother Taaqiy?
This is an image of Harkuf.
Oh, from his tomb?
From his tomb.
Oh, not many people get up to those cliffs, my brother. You know, it's about 1,000 steps up there. It's no joke.
Yeah, it's not. It's a long walk, but that was a journey we had to take. And I was proud to actually have an opportunity to meet him.
And all of those tombs are from the 6th dynasty, or what time period are we talking here?
The tombs of the nobles in Aswan are from various different periods, just throughout, the Kemetic civilization. You have all just from the earliest periods to the later periods. 6th dynasty, some of the earlier tombs we have.
And you know for a fact that that's Harkuf.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's a nice piece. That's a nice piece.
And again, this is something I had the opportunity to personally visit. We actually filmed a lot of part of HAPI here inside the tomb. And I was honored to meet him because we've been talking about Harkuf for many, many, many years. And I just wanted to share Harkuf with everyone. And, obviously there's no mistaking who and what this brother was. And he talked about his journeys and his trade expeditions to the south of Yam or to Kerma, and how, the relationships they had with each other.
So obviously you saw the letter written by the king to Harkuf. Yes. It's in that temple, isn't it? Or tomb.
Yes. He documented that. Absolutely. Definitely document that. So this is one of the images of here, and also in the front of the door, coming into the tomb as well. There's also, we talked about
the burner. You want to show
yes, very important. Yes, the burner, very, very important to get people who have not seen HAPI and a glimpse of what the burner looked like. Here's the actual instant burner itself. And you can see on a display in the museum. This is the Oriental Institute in Chicago, University of Chicago. And you can see we showed this earlier, but here's the actual circular incense burner that was found in Kustul that gives us the indication or gives us the understanding idea. This is one of the things that, we talk about the development of Nile Valley civilization and its origins being Southern. So definitely wanted to share those with everyone. Definitely, like Felicia said, please like, share, comment on the video. It's a really interesting discussion today.
That Kustul incense burner is from Sudan or Egypt?
Well, it would be technically today modern day Egypt in terms of boundaries and borders.
And how old is it?
Goes back to, it predates dynastic Kemet. So what we know, I'm a put it around 3200 BC, but I've seen different dates and periods in terms of that. So we look at the unification of Kemet around 3100. So we give the incense burner a couple hundred years prior to that. But this
so what was the relationship at that time between Kemet and Nubia in the pre-dynastic period?
Right, in the pre-dynastic period, very important. The relationship was one; they were one people. Because one of the things I wanted to establish quickly on is that when we look at so-called A and C group development, A and C group was not exclusive to just what they would call Nubia. A and C group was also, you find the foundation or the early sediments of what they refer to as Kemetic civilization as well, not just from art and culture, but also ethnicity.
Where would you put Nabta in there? You're familiar with Nabta, I'm sure. What is Nabta for those who might not know?
So we think of the earliest, I won't say the earliest because when I stop, I get this feedback, but I'll just keep going. Because we learned on HAPI Talks that there's actually an older solar calendar in Africa, older than Nabta, and that's Adam's calendar down in South Africa. And that's, I can't think of the actual African word for it. Malefi Asante was telling us about it. But Nabta would be the second runner up to that. And you find that just in the area of Kustul. So there was heavy concentration in this middle Nile region. And it appears to me that when the Sahara began to encroach, people migrated to this middle Nile region. And we look at the reason why. We look at the reasons why that corridor was always the trade routes, not only to the south, but also to the west. So now it becomes very vital, and you can see why they fought over that area for so long, especially when the money started to really, really get involved. And when the other groups began to come in, it wasn't just fighting with the Kemet. They was also fighting with the Kushites of the south, and the Kushites in the Kemet figured out a way how to combine their forces and to defeat these other armies. And that's essentially what happened. And there's evidence of that, not only in the New Kingdom, but also in the Middle Kingdom with the construction of the forts. The way the history is taught is that the forts created in the Middle Kingdom were as garrisons against Kushites and Nubians. That couldn't be further from the truth. There's evidence that there were garrisons of not only Kemetic soldiers, but also Kushite soldiers in these forts. Not only that, there's also a record of an account of a temple of Heru being built by one of the rulers of Kush during that period, which is interesting because if they have odds, they don't share the common philosophical views, but they did. I think Chancellor Williams also said in his book, it was never a question of unification for them. It was a question of who was going to rule once they were unified.
So you would say that this is one of the most, everything you've talked about today indicates to me, and you can confirm it, why it's so important that Africans themselves do their own independent research, why we need to tell our story from our perspective, because a lot of what I'm hearing today is not what I get from the history books.
Right. So one of the things that kind of led me into a lot of this was the travels, just moving back and forth. Like I said, going to Sudan, seeing the Haru Baguette, which to me is probably one of the most fascinating things I've seen in my travels. Seeing it in a place that I was taught by history should not be there because they hated each other.
Let me ask one more question, and then you can take it wherever you want. Why does the term Ethiopia come into play here? Many people use that word Ethiopia. Drusilla Dungy's Housen's book, wonderful Ethiopians of the ancient Kushite Empire. Why the word Ethiopia?
Because a lot of our history was documented and recorded by Greeks. And that's how the Greeks referred to everyone in that area as Ethiopians. They did not fully understand the history. They didn't know the distinctions of particular groups or nations. They just called everyone burnt faces, which is actually a negative connotation for who and what we are.
So this is not the Ethiopia of today in the Horn of Africa.
No, it's not.
All right, my brother, take it from here.
So the Haru Beget in a place that it's not supposed to be leads to a couple different notions. And it's an understanding that these people were one. They believed they had the same deities in terms of understanding. We know Amun was heavily revered in the South. A lot of times the Kushites, Amun was always depicted in the ram's head or the ram Amun. We also know that Dedun, D-E-D-U-N, was another nature or deity that was revered by both groups, and there's actually a temple in Kemet to Dedun, which deals with the 4 cardinal points. They believe it was a Nubian deity, but the Kemetu also revered and built temples dedicated to Dedun. When we see something like the Haru Beget or Heru, we talked about the Nubian ruler, the Kushite ruler, who built temples to Heru during a period that, again, history is going to tell you that it was a so-called Egyptian occupation. They built forts to subjugate the Nubians, but in fact, they built forts to do what? To protect the trade routes, to protect the money from bandits. And it was people on both ends of it who had a common interest in the protection of trade routes. It just wasn't one group, because we know that the Kemetu and the Kushites traded very heavily with one another, and Harkuf tells us about that. So this whole notion of them constantly being at odds with one another is a lie. There was some groups, and we see that in the Apple symbol, that it was germane to the specific groups of individuals, of specific tribes, not the whole conglomerate of everyone south of the first cataract.
I guess a lot of people consider me a great historian, but what I'm really best at is being a great student. And today I have been a student of you, my brother. I learned a lot of new things, and I know a lot. I've been to Egypt 25 times, but today you taught the teacher, and I appreciate that. And I just wish you nothing but success with the tour and everything you do. So today was a brilliant presentation, and I'm grateful to have been able to partake. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. I appreciate you coming. We've been talking about this for some time, family. Dr. Rashidi and I, we talked about doing this months ago. And, Felicia and I, we're always busy doing just a little bit of everything. So just didn't have time to actually put this together. And Sunday is a non-typical day for Happy Talks, but to make it work, we did it on a Sunday. And I thank you, Dr. Rashidi, again for coming in and spending this time with us and being a part of it, understanding that, you've had a very busy weekend.
And about to have an even busier next week. So you're going to Kemet, and how many days are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there for 18 days.
18.
And this will be my first trip anywhere since March 2020. So I'm a little bit nervous. I have some anxiety. I have a small group of about 15 people, and then I'm going to spend 5 days in a luxury hotel. Just myself, hopefully looking at the Nile or looking at the pyramids. But one of the things that's a bit frustrating for me is the belief that no matter how many times you go, there's still so much to see. For example, at Saqqara now, they've reopened or opened the tomb of King Djoser, designed by Imhotep. But Saqqara itself is a vast, vast, vast area. For example, I don't know if Brother Taaqiy has seen this. One of the tombs that I really want to see and I'm going to try to get in somehow is called the Doctor's Tomb, where they're performing that circumcision. Have you been in that tomb, brother?
Not yet.
Well, hopefully I'm going to get some pictures. We'll see. The other thing you talked about are the tombs around Abydos.
Yes.
That's something that very, very, very few people get to go and see. just for a minute, tell me, and here's my point, my whole point. In those 5 days that I have, I'm going to try to do something that I haven't done before. But before I go, tell us a little bit about those tombs, those early dynastic tombs and second intermediate tombs around Abydos, and I'll leave you in peace.
So I just have a confession. Most of the images we see are my personal from my travel. I have not been to the tomb field in Abydos, where we find some of the earliest burials. And one of the things that we know between Abydos and Saqqara is that you may have had what they call cenotaphs in one, meaning that you had dual burials, some Abydos, some Saqqara, but the earliest first, second dynasty rulers had tombs in both locations. What we find, what I showed earlier, was an image from the Casa Kimwe, who was actually the predecessor of Zoser. And he was the first individual to combine the two elements of enclosure wall and pyramid, which was actually really interesting. So Casa Kimwe kind of set the way, and the next thing you see.
Are you telling me you saw his tomb or got close to his tomb?
No. I haven't been in the desert yet. And HAPI actually opened the door for us to do a lot of different things. I'm actually going to show some of the images with their balance now, because some of these places you can't go without special clearance. Mm-hmm. And I will get to the desert in Abydos, because it's one of the places I had to go visit. Minas, Casa Kimwe, the people that we don't really see quite often, but I definitely want to go in there and see them. So no, that was one of the only things that I didn't actually take. I took that picture.
Okay. Thank you, my brother. And thank you, my sister. You all have a beautiful day.
Okay, Dr. Rashidi, thank you so much.
All right, you safe travels. No, let me tell you, it's so much. It's so clean on the airplanes.
Is it? I'm a little bit nervous.
No,
but I'm going, and I'm thinking that this tour might reinvigorate me and make me want to begin my travels again. I'd like to do another tour, or not tour, but I'd like to do a trip to Europe in October, to the museums in Germany in particular. We don't often talk about the Germans. We talk about the British Museum, we talk about the Louvre, but the Germans stole a lot. Not just from the Nile Valley itself, but the Germans ended up with a lot of the Benin plaques. I've been doing a little work lately on the kingdoms of West Africa and trying to show the connections between the Nile Valley and the rest of the motherland. So anyway,
before you go, Dr. Rashidi, if you have 5 more minutes, I just kind of wanted to talk about this, and this is something I forgot to show. We talked about Darabalis and the significance of the first African Union and the Kerman, so-called the Kerman Nubians, being in Darabalis with the Kebetiyu. And some of the images of the mud brick palace, or the remains of it, actually, have here. And I wanted to kind of share some of this so they can see. And some of this is, again, in HAPI, but to get an opportunity to see what the area would have looked like. This whole area here is the remnants of Darabalis.
Where is this?
So this is about 2 hours. Speaking of Abydos, this is not too far south from Abydos. This is the area, just to give it some historical context. When the Hyksos began to occupy Egypt, the royal family left Waset and moved north to Darabalis, and they built a fortress there.
North or south?
North of Luxor.
After the Hyksos invasions, or as a result of the Hyksos invasions?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was a fortified city there. There were several individuals that lived in that city with them. And those individuals are the Kerman Nubians, so forth, that we kind of spoke about minutes ago. So it's so important to really get a really good glimpse at what Darabalis would have looked like. Here's the remains of the mud brick palace that was there. And again, historically, the groups that were there, the Medjay, again, the Kerman Nubians, the Kebetiyu, they all lived there amongst each other, and they formed the confederation, and they defeated the Hyksos. But after the war, the Hyksos was over, they regained control of Kerma from the individuals that now occupy Kerma. And one of the remarkable things that came out of this period was the Kamoza Stela, which talks about the king of Pepe of the Hyksos trying to forge an alliance with the new ruler in Kush to open up a southern front on the Egypt's southern border to attack them from both ends. So that did not work. They found the messenger in the desert, and they were victorious on both ends, not just on the northern end, but also on the southern end. But that history, we're told, is incorrect in terms of why they invaded South. So I just wanted to kind of share this. I'm sorry to keep you.
No. It's all very, very interesting. I think a lot of these are, for me, new perspectives, African-centered perspectives, you might say. Now, I've taken two groups to Sudan, and what I intend to do the next time, God willing, I'm going to take a group around November of next year. We'll see. I've developed some good contacts there, even with people in the government. What we intend to do is to go to drive south from Cairo to Minya to Luxor to Aswan, and instead of flying back to Cairo to fly into Khartoum, to continue south of Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is only 30 miles from the Sudanese border, and to end up all the way in Khartoum. And one of the areas that I want to stop in is the area, I can't think of the name of it. They're the temples of Amenhotep III and the temples of Queen Taaqiy in the very, very northern part. Yeah, that part I haven't gotten to. When I went to, and I'll say this, because there's a lot of perspectives involved. When I went to Sudan the first time, and even the second time, the Sudanese scholars that I talked to don't view, for the most part, the mighty pharaohs of Egypt in a glorious light. They just see them as another group of imperialists. And these are Sudanese scholars. Another thing they told me, we need to reinvestigate the sack of Merowe by Aksum. They have a very different perspective on that. They told me that a lot of the greatest Nubians are defined. I'm surprised you didn't really go into it, that cash from Kerma of those Napatan kings. They told me that it was actually an African who found those. So I think the work that you're doing, my brother, is very good. On my tour this time coming up, we're going to go to Minya. We're going to go into the royal enclosure of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. And so to me, it's very, very, very exciting. And you have shown me some cutting edge stuff. I never heard really too much that it could be because of that magnificent temple of Nefertari at Abu Simbel is an indication that Nefertari herself was a Nubian and was from that area. So
thank you for bringing up Solab, because Solab is also so what Ramses did at Abu Simbel was a replication of Amenhotep III's and Queen T's temple at Solab.
Really?
And you have, yes, because you have the male female temple, and you also have that being built in the southern region. That's why we called Queen T the Bridge of the Nile, because she still somehow had an influence. She commanded a tremendous amount of influence in that region, and she was respected.
You could compare, or would you compare Ramses II and Nefertari with Amenhotep III and Queen Taaqiy? Would you give them a similar kind of stature, or no?
Well, in terms of how Nefertari was revered and deified at Abu Simbel, a power couple, absolutely.
Who else would you put on that level? Amos the First and Amos Nefertari, perhaps?
Definitely put them on there. Menchu Hotep, and I think his wife is Kiwit.
Who is the figure in Nile Valley history, or figures, that you are most drawn to?
Can't answer that question.
You can't tell me who the baddest Africans from the ancient Nile Valley were? Like for me, for example, one person in particular stands out above all the others, and that's Namare Amenhotep III from the 12th dynasty. And as you know, the 12th dynasty had a keen relationship with Nubia itself. Some would even suggest that the rulers of the 12th dynasty were themselves Nubian.
Absolutely, and I believe that. I believe that the genealogy of these individuals were not always of I'm gonna say of northern origin. I believe some of them was southern origin. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
You can't. So for me,
I cut you off. I'm
for
sorry.
me, some of the, I'm Hotep the Third is definitely one of the favorites. Thutmose is the third. Some of the earlier rulers, Khufu is always a standout for me, and some of the nobles, some of the common people like Moses son of Abana,
Okay.
Harkuf. These are to me like really tremendous, great individuals. Everyone from that so-called 17th dynasty, Second Rata, Queen Tetisheri, Queen Ahotep, Amosa Nefertari, Second Rata, Mosa Kamosa, all of them. Everyone from that whole Deir Ballis area, everyone for me, the freedom fighters, the liberators, they always stands out. Those who kind of like reunified the country and gave, gives us hope in terms of what we need to do. And they did it. What we're going through today is not very different from what they went through thousands of years ago. They had to deal with occupation and they had to liberate themselves. So, I mean, the only thing we got to do is kind of just, take up the blueprint and look at the blueprint they laid out and and duplicate it. That's it.
Well, that sounds like a good time to call it a day. Bless and love, everyone. Thank you for having me.
All right. Peace, brother. Take care.
Bye-bye, Dr. Rashidi. You know what I thought was kind of interesting is that everyone is putting up who they're like the profound person that they like from this period. And I was thinking about the cruise, because we're going to have in this, and I'm referring you guys to the cruise that Akhet Tours is taking, and Taaqiy is the tour operator. He's owned Akhet Tours for over 20 years, but we are doing something different with this this tour, because this is called the Best of Both Worlds. And one thing is that in Egypt, like during the day, we're going to be learning all this information, but at night, there's like really nothing too much to do, but we're bringing the nightlife to Egypt. And so as we're sailing down the Nile, we're going to have like a throwback party where you dress up like your favorite ancient. So everyone that you guys are talking about in this chat, come on, I'm just saying, we're leaving next month. I mean, not next month. I wish we were going next month, but next year. So you got time to get your finances together right there and head to Akhet Tours and and check it out. Yeah.
So
I should show the video, shouldn't I?
Yeah, go ahead. You can show the video.
All right, guys, we're going to show you our Akhet Tours video, and we'll be right back.
Want to travel to Egypt with HAPI? Since 1999, Akhet Tours has featured some of the most culturally dynamic tours to Egypt. Taaqiy Grant, the director of the award-winning documentary film HAPI, is also the CEO and founder of Akhet Tours. As part of our 23rd anniversary trip to the Nile, Akhet Tours is hosting an extraordinary, first-of-its-kind tour that includes nightlife on the Nile. This expedition is geared towards the savvy traveler seeking an intellectually stimulating experience and a good time. Visitors will check into a hand-picked chartered luxury cruise exclusively for our group. By day, we will visit the pyramids, and at night, we will party under the cosmos as we sail up the Nile. Come experience the historical landmarks that have stood the test of time. For more information, please visit our website at www.akhettours.com. You can also email us at akhettours@gmail.com.
So, just to give people a little context, HAPI kind of started with Akhet Tours, just doing the trips, moving around, and really wanting to share this civilization, this culture with other people. One of the things for me that was the inspiration, the impetus behind it, was the first time I went to Egypt. I didn't see many, or really, I think this particular group trip back in '99, I didn't see any non-indigenous Black people. But there were people from all over the world, the French, to this, to that, the German, the Chinese, the Japanese, but there was no Black folks. So I was like, damn, we got to get Black people into this. So we formulated the company and we started bringing people there. This is the first time I've been there. I don't know how many times I've been to Kemet, probably somewhere like 40 times. But I can say this is the first time we're doing something of this magnitude. It's going to be an exciting journey. I'm actually excited about it. There's not much in Egypt that really kind of, every time I go to the pyramids, I'm always excited. But this here is something that's different. and we get an opportunity to, like Felicia said, the best of both worlds, and not only to enjoy ourselves while we're learning, but learning while we're enjoying ourselves. And even the themes there, like the linen party, we talk about linen. Linen was one of the most sought after commodities in the ancient world, particularly in Egypt. And linen is one of the commodities they actually traded with Nubia or with Kush. So that linen party has tremendous undertones when you talk about just from a historical context and learning while you're enjoying yourself. So I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be great. But space is limited. We actually chartered a ship to make these things come about. We have to be exclusive. We cannot share the ship with other people, other groups. You wouldn't want to do that anyway. So we have a fixed number or finite number of cabins. You cannot be on a tour if you're not on the ship. So tell everybody, get their deposits in as soon as possible, because people are already booking their tour. And it's like, people, Black folks, I got time since in February. I ain't worried about
No,
it.
but you don't really have time, because listen,
They don't, and because people already signed it up, and people like, listen, just go ahead and do it. Get your deposit in, registration, and we can work out payment plans as we go along. But that's the most important piece to do that. And people, like I said, it's important also to support the program. We do this. It's a lot for us to kind of keep moving along. We got the Nubian shirts. We talked. Dr. Rashidi talked about the Nubian, the statues being unearthed, and we kind of put it together. Get opportunity, go to the HAPI store. Definitely get a Nubia shirt. Also, the Nubia DVD. You can see some of the things we spoke about in the presentation in the Nubia DVD. Also, HAPI talks a lot about what we spoke about. So these are two great films to get to really have a better understanding, or just kind of connect the dots in terms of the presentation, the film, or the films. And like I said, if you don't want those, definitely get one of these shirts. We have the long sleeve Nubia and the short sleeve Nubia. Great items to have. Also, those who just interested, you got to the super chat, cash apps, please feel free to support the program. And I know we might have some questions here in the audience. Anybody want to ask a couple questions? We can. If not, we can boogie. So if I want to.
But wait, okay, wait, no, I actually prepared some questions, because I was like, man, this is like, I will never ever get a chance to sit down and chat with you. Just back us up just for a second, Taaqiy. What was your first, like, why did you want to even go to Kemet? Like, how did you get there, like, initially? And how old were you when you said, you know what, I want to go there?
Wow. So I don't remember the how old part, but it had to be, I would say somewhere maybe around 16, 17. Egypt was a place that really started to come up on the radar. And it was like definitely around that time, I was like, you know what, got to go visit Egypt, got to go see the pyramids, got to be a part of this. And so definitely around that time. It wasn't until maybe 8 years later that I had my first opportunity to go. And that was fascinating. I still remember the first time seeing the pyramids, and or a remarkable experience I'll never forget.
Wow. So,
and for me, I would watch a lot of documentaries. Every time something came on a Discovery Channel about Egypt, I would watch it. Every book I found, I would read it. And I became more fascinated. And finally I was like, you know what? Yeah, when it was time to make the journey, it was time to make it.
Wow.
And that has opened the door and led the way to all the work we're doing now.
Yeah. And so, when people are asking, there's a couple questions that are floating around in the chat about the tour. So one is like age group. So what do you think is a good age group for people to go? Like I'm bringing
no. That's
and they're what, 14 and
that's a good question. I wish I had time. I would go bring one of my pictures. So my oldest daughter is 17, and she's been going since she was a lap baby. I've seen people bring kids as young as 2, 3, 4, 5, especially like around 6, 7. I think it's a good age because they get an opportunity. They start to see things, and they're learning, and you're planting those vital seeds in their brains, and they have opportunity to see themselves in a light that they're not going to see on television or in the school books. So bring the kids. Absolutely. It's very important, critically important to bring the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this whole notion of being vaccinated,
Well, right now, right now it's just a test, and I hope it remains that way. And we'll see as we get closer. But right now, it's just the test a few days before, and that could change come in February. So we have to wait and see.
Okay. All right. You guys have any more questions in the chat? Yeah, there was a lot of questions while you were actually presenting. But you guys, you can head over to ACAT Tours. There's actually more information. You can find out stuff. And if and listen, we do payment plans. So you can definitely send us an email. But the most important piece is to to drop your money for your deposit. It's $300, but that guarantees you a seat. Because like Taaqiy said, we only have a certain amount of people, because we're going to have the whole ship by ourselves. We're going to have a linen party, a throwback party, comedic yoga, a paint and sip, but on papyrus. Just saying. So, this is no other tour. It's like,
and then, Showtime on the Nile, talent show. People get an opportunity to showcase some of the things that they do. We always have, Black people are very talented, singing, dancing, rapping, whatever it is that you do. You have opportunity to compete with like-minded people on the ship. So definitely looking forward to it.
And, and let me just tell you guys, the first time I ever went to Egypt was with Taaqiy's tour group. And let me tell you, as soon as just at the airport at JFK, you find out all the people that's going, and we were all together. And by the time we get off that plane, we were like a straight family. And these are people that coming from everywhere, not just New York City. And by the end, I was literally sad to see everyone go. And so, like, if you're, traveling by yourself, I was traveling by myself, don't feel like, oh, I'm not going to know anybody. Trust me, by the time you get 2 hours into that flight, you're going to know everybody. And it's definitely a very, it's a cool trip. You're seeing a lot of information. And yes, I see somebody talking about the balloon rides. We all got up on the on the hot air balloon and did that. That was really super nice. The tour, though, with being on the boat and just cruising down the Nile, that is going to be super nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Definitely want to say shout out to everyone in the audience. Come hanging out with us this Sunday afternoon. Nafisha, Julie, Stacy, King Simon, Jay Thomas, Ronnie Kepresh, Michelle Sankofa, AJ, Tracy Brooks. Definitely a lot of people here. These are T. Kelly, Menace X. You know what I mean? These are definitely people. Rashamella. People always come through. Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely would say shout out to everyone for coming and hang out with us. And we'll be back with you guys shortly and with another show, probably sometime this week. And we love you guys and thank you for your support. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes. All right, fam. So there you go. It's ACAT Tours. That's how you put down your deposit. And everything's on the website. The registration forms is click. You'll be there with us in February. It's going to be straight fire. And again, if you want to pick up the HAPI DVD and also Nubia, because Nubia is also, oh, there we go. You're showing Nubia. I'm showing, Nubia HAPI right there. You can pick up those on the website, as well as the cool t-shirts that we have on and all of his support and love. And you are supporting a Black-owned business. So that's what's up to. Money stays in the family.
Yes, and it's funny you say that because just so everyone knows, ACAT Tours is definitely the employer of a lot of Black people, and we definitely have, figure out ways how to keep the money circulated in the community. Everything that we do, the creation of the videos, the social media management, the administration piece is just all our people. So definitely that support, it goes a long way, not to us, but it keeps going in its circles.
Absolutely.
And the people who are definitely a part of this outside of, definitely on that note, I want to give a shout out to Sirius B for creation of all the social media images that you guys have seen. Freda Williams, the creation of that video that you saw. Yep. Abucha Shot, she's working on the back end, helping with the administration stuff. You know, we also got Nafisa Hope here. That's a part of this as well. So it's so many different people that is extended members of the HAPI team. And when you're supporting HAPI, you're definitely helping supporting them. So shout out to everyone. And that's it for me. If I don't got anything else to say, Felicia, you got any closing words?
I don't have any closing words. I think, I think that you guys, if you can make it possible to come and come with us to Egypt in February, make it happen. And also just purchase HAPI so you can, all this information that Taaqiy gave to us today and Dr. Rashidi, you guys will be able to have some more visuals to add to it. So,
right. And like I said, feel free, super chat, Cash App, definitely that all goes a long way. GoFundMe is all on the website. And sign up for the newsletter also. We didn't talk about the newsletter today, but hapifilm.com. Be a part of the newsletter. Great information in the newsletter. Stay updated to everything that's going on in the community. And it's a great publication. A lot of work goes into it. We even get some of the youth involved. So this whole HAPI movement is tremendous, and we couldn't do it without you guys.
Yeah. And we're going to be announcing something pretty soon. Can't wait for the announcement.
Yes, there's always something going on the HAPI side.
Yes. And so
anyway,
that's why
family.
Yeah, well, wait, that's why it's important for the sign up for the newsletter, because the newsletter people always find out stuff before everybody else. I'm just saying. Hapifilm.com.
Yes, hapifilm.com. Sign up for that newsletter. All right, guys. Listen.
All right.
Peace.
Peace and blessings.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?